So welcome members to the 81st meeting of the Committee for Finance in the 22 to 27 mandate. Members, we are not in Parliament buildings, so you'll be aware, because we're not in Parliament buildings. We're here at Goodwood House in the city centre. We've had an off-site meeting today to hear about the Integr8 Programme, which is a vital piece of transformation work being done by the department. But we are being recorded as audio with the helpful support of Assembly Broadcasting, and it'll be available on the Listen Again service. But to those of you who are here in person, the usual rules do apply in relation to mobile devices. You can use them, but ideally they'll be in airplane mode or on silence. We have a young man named Jack Stewart who's doing work experience with us. Welcome, Jack, from Ulster University. We also have a member whose birthday it is today, who I'm going to embarrass, given it doesn't always happen. We have actually Deirdre Hargey's birthday, and what better way could you spend your birthday than with all of us in the Finance Committee? Happy birthday, Deirdre. Agenda item 1 is apologies. We have apologies from two members for different reasons. Steve Aiken and Gemma Dolan. I have to give my apologies in advance because I will have to leave early for an unavoidable personal appointment, and thank the Deputy Chair in advance for stepping in, but I'll be here for the first hour or thereabouts. Agenda item 2 is a declaration of interest. Does anybody have a interest they wish to declare? No? Okay. Agenda item 3 is Chairperson's business. The first item of Chairperson's business is the Integr8 visit, which we are on and we have done. We had a very useful tour led by Kirsty Murray. Kirsty is the Programme Director of the Integr8 Programme, which is a very significant programme of transformation. I found it interesting. I was certainly reassured that the people who are working on it are extremely capable and have thought a lot about user experience and how improvements can be tracked and making sure it's on time and on budget. But obviously a big part of our work in this committee today and then going forward will be ensuring it is designed and actually delivers meaningful benefits. So while it was a useful meeting today, obviously the scrutiny part starts here. If anybody else wants to come in and say anything on that. Okay, next item, Chairperson's business I wanted to raise is in relation to the document which I have, which hasn't actually been published. And it's not on camera, but I've printed it out because I was able to get a copy of it, and it is the open book review of the Northern Ireland Executive Budget. So I'm not sure whether I'm.
I know the source now.
It wasn't me because I didn't have it, but I'm aware this exists, and I kind of want to know why we haven't had it as a committee. It's clearly in wide circulation with the media. I think it is in no way acceptable that members of this committee haven't seen it. I don't think it's credible that I think as of now, either the Department of Finance or the Treasury or both should be sending it to the committee so that we have it. It's not credible, and it's an insult to our intelligence as a committee that we haven't seen this document yet. Members will have seen the reporting, some will have seen the actual document. I think there are legitimate criticisms of some of the conclusions the Treasury have arrived at. From my perspective, there's nothing in it that's all that new in terms of their perspective. I think it reinforces the sense the executive clearly has a disagreement. I think there's a strong argument that that there needs to be a more coherent process between the UK government and the executive, rather than simply lobbing insults and different perspectives around on this. And I think the public are probably very confused and frustrated. But I want to give other members the opportunity to come in if they want to say something. Deirdre Hargey, well, Deputy Chair, and then Deirdre Hargey.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, and you had raised it in the previous meeting that we would write and ask, for access to this. We had raised it with the officials last week, and again, we hadn't got it as a committee, and I think that a further follow-up to that effect, now it has come out, it's really, really disappointing. Obviously, as a finance committee, that we didn't have a place to do it, but it did seem quite clear from the communications from the officials and what we were getting back previously from the Department of Finance that they weren't releasing it. It wasn't their document, and it was in confidence in terms of the terms of reference. So I don't know who's leaked it or why or what the purpose of it was, but I do think that following up on the previous request, you had asked for it. I think that it wouldn't do any harm to ask, could we have someone in just to talk about the contents of it now that we have it, and what their opinions are on it. Not that we're saying that it's off the department, but I think that it would be good to follow up with that.
I think it makes sense. I think both the UK government, I think the Treasury and the Executive, we should be asking for representatives from both, but let's bring Deirdre and then Owen.
I know, just to kind of concur with what Diane said, I mean, I think officials last week said that it wasn't their document to release, and there had to be a process. And obviously this is in the midst. I mean, I don't know who leaked it, but obviously only part of it was leaked to perpetuate a certain narrative out there in terms of the financing. And I think there has been a unity of purpose, certainly within the Executive and across the parties, that there clearly isn't enough in terms of a baseline budget on behalf of the Executive, and some are trying to perpetuate, I suppose, just a focus on revenue raising and not looking at those broader issues. So I do think that's extremely unfortunate, and I would reiterate, I mean, I know the Finance Minister was out last night, you know, that there had been the request for the British Secretary of State to meet the Executive. He declined that. And the British government, if they're serious about addressing these issues and working in partnership in a meaningful way, then they need to engage with the Executive and with the ministers there that understand the budgetary pressures, whilst looking at that transformational change that we all want to see as well. So, but I do think it's been deliberately leaked to try and create a narrative, which I think we all need to push back against, to be honest, because it doesn't serve anybody here, just to perpetuate that.
Owen Tennyson.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, first of all, I concur that the committee should be furnished with the document now, given that it's in wide circulation. I mean, I haven't seen the document, but from what has been briefed to the media, it's clear that that information has been put in the public domain in an attempt to try and shame or embarrass the Executive, and it has utterly backfired. Because I think it exposes the level of contempt that Treasury has for devolution and for the devolved institutions. They cannot seriously or credibly be arguing that when we share a land border with the Republic of Ireland that the Executive end pay parity. They cannot seriously be suggesting that the way to balance our budget is by, in one fell swoop, taking £1.3 billion out of the Department of Health. It's not a credible or serious attempt to engage with the Executive or Stormont more broadly on the substantive issues, and I actually think has been counterproductive. But more than that, I think it is a missed opportunity, because I think there was an element of goodwill when the Department of Finance allowed the Treasury to come in and do an open book exercise, that they supported that process, that they were willing to engage in a spirit of collaboration with UK government for Treasury to produce a document which clearly does not stand up to any scrutiny whatsoever and adds nothing meaningful to the debate on our public finances. I think it's disgraceful, actually, the way in which Treasury has behaved, and I hope that we can get answers about why the process has clearly gone so wrong, but also do some thinking as a committee about the next steps that we might be able to take to move this debate about funding for public services forward.
Jerry Carroll and then Brian Kingston.
Yeah, I was sure Owen and other people's view about the contempt that the Treasury and the British government generally is shown towards this committee and people who elect us here. I agree with that. And I think when you see I haven't read the report either, but the contents of what's public seems to be the same old story from the British government. It's water charges, sack workers, raise bills, hike rates, and then obviously money will magically be saved, but it won't be saved because you're going to be economically punishing tens of thousands, if not more, of people. So I think we need to push back. I agree with Deirdre on that narrative, and I would like to sort of question any British government representative of this committee and challenge that narrative and ask them, why they're not looking at corporate profits, why they're not looking at energy profits, which have gone through the roof, as we discussed in the chamber on Tuesday. So contempt for this committee and for people here, but I think the politics of what's behind that, without reading the whole document, seems to be showing quite contempt for people as well, given the politics behind it. So I would like the chance to quiz them and push back on that stuff.
Okay, Brian Kingston.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree that we should be writing to Treasury asking for a copy of the report. It is their report, was supplied to the Executive. But just even going by the media articles on it, I can see why it ended up only being a Treasury report rather than from Department of Finance. It just seems to be the Treasury's wish list and repeated what the Secretary of State of others have claimed about that we should be taxing people more, that we challenging pay parity, that suggesting that people in Northern Ireland shouldn't be paid the same rate compared to people doing the same job in GB. So this is just non-starters. And the only interesting thing in the media reports was the difference in the relative level of spending in different departments. It's something I hadn't seen before. But I think this committee, and in fairness to the executive and the assembly as a whole, is up to the challenge of transformation. I've seen some of that today. That's the way forward, where we can make savings and efficiency savings. But certainly we should be getting a copy of this report. Yeah. And as I say, it has ended up as if it's been written by the Secretary of State, or it's taken its lead from him. And I do think that it was meant to be something looking at our spending and assisting with a transformation process, rather than a political wish list from Hilary Benn.
Okay, so I think there's a degree of consensus that we need to address the absurd and unsustainable situation that we don't have an official copy. I think it's fairly clear the UK government, in all probability, they can correct this assumption if they're wrong, leaked it in order to perpetuate a particular view of executive spending. I would say, but I accept others in the committee wouldn't agree with it, that the executive rather reinforces that cynicism from the Treasury, including when we have a situation where the budget itself was published 3 months ago by the Finance Minister, and he is now apparently disowning it. So I think there's a two-way street here of cynicism from London and ineptitude in the executive, but that's a personal view. But I think where there is a shared view in the committee is that we need to take evidence on this. And if people want to challenge, I think, some of the assumptions in this document, we should be, as we've said before in this committee, willing to get evidence from UK government civil servants. If people are content with that, I would suggest we write to, I think we need to...
We've already got a letter into the CST. We copied that to the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee, which is also pursuing the document. We have emailed the department yesterday requesting the document as well, and that will go into our Dal read it again, that we're seeking both the document and a joint briefing with DOF and Treasury officials.
I think a really important point to make is if they are attempting to make an argument about spending decisions by the Northern Ireland Executive and how these, from their perspective, decisions, and there are very many questions over specific things. There are certain things in here which are, by the way, in my view, reasonable. For example, my hobby horse of the £3 million a year on air passenger duty, which I don't think it would be should really upset anyone to not spend that every year. But certainly many of the assumptions, including things like the big whack out of the health service overnight that is put in there as deliberately quite big numbers in order to provoke possibly or to stir up debate. Well, if they want debate, I think a legitimate corollary to that is they come and take evidence from a devolved finance committee. So I would ask from, if members are content, I think we should be asked either, so we have a letter in, but I think we should be specifically asking that Treasury/NIO, and I think particularly it would be helpful to get from, because clearly this is a document written by the Treasury, whoever leaked it, and also, but I also think the executive should come in, or the finance, so a representative from the finance department should come in to explain their work in terms of developing a theory argument.
No, and I think we should be asking the British government or the reps, whatever relevant department, to be here, because if the Chancellor Rachel Reeves can get up in Westminster this week and say that with the rise of inflation, with the cost of living, that burden shouldn't be passed on to the English public or local businesses, then why on the other hand they're saying that burden should be passed on to people here? So I think we do need them and hold them to account around those questions.
I think that's fair.
And I don't think the 3 million on our passenger is going to cut it in terms of what they're asking for, Matthew. So if there are bigger areas where you believe as the opposition that changes should be made that would make the difference that the British government are saying can be made, I would like to hear them.
Well, I think agreeing a budget, agreeing a plan forward by the two main executive parties would be a start. But rather than getting that debate here, what was suggested, we're going to go away, say to the British government, relevant British government departments and the executive or the department, i.e. the finance department here, that we want an evidence session on this, and I think the sooner the better, particularly if there's now a question about this being further engagement between the British government and between the Treasury and the Finance Department, and it would also be helpful if the department could tell us whether there is now further engagement on this in relation to the budget. I think that would be helpful. So that's, if members are content, we'll do that. The next item of chairperson's business relates to Jade's Law. Jade's Law is a campaign. I won't go into all the detail. There's an AQW in your tabled pack that was answered by the Minister to the Deputy Chair, and I'll just bring the Deputy Chair in here because she's done a bit of work on it.
Yeah, thank you very much. So this is Jade's Law, for anyone that doesn't know. It's over in mainland where in a situation where one partner murders the other, they automatically suspend their parental responsibility. And it's come very much to the fore here recently following Amy Doherty's murder up in Londonderry, and her family's doing a lot of campaign work around it. I've been engaged with this and had put some questions in, so I had went to the Justice Minister first, just thinking, it's justice, it's law, and it came back, obviously it's family law, so it's something then that, bounces around with us all the time. So I had put the question into the Finance Minister around it, and you can see there it's in the pack. He has agreed to go and get his officials to undertake some preliminary work to see what is possible, what could or should be done on it, and I'd be really keen if the committee could pick this up. I think it's a really important one, it's very topical, and there is the campaign going on, and whenever the Minister has said he's asked officials to look into it, I'd be quite keen that whatever that work would be, that we would invite officials into committee and pick that up here.
So Jerry, you want to come into it?
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Chair, and happy to kind of agree to that, but I have maybe some wider questions about NMOs, and I understand that that's the Department of Finance has some power or regulation over NMO, so as well as specifically a briefing on what the Chair is proposing, I would maybe like to ask some general questions about NMOs as well, so I don't know if it's different officials or the same officials, but just to make that a bit easier.
I'm going to make two suggestions. One, we have some of the relevant officials who cover a lot of the civil law reform work who are obviously in front of us later on. So I think some of they may be aware. It's worth us checking in with them as to whether they're aware. I think we can also write to the department to establish what the policy position is, and then seek to have take further evidence at that point if you're content with that. And that would obviously include those questions you've asked, Jerry, if members are content. Okay. Now, final quick item of chairperson's business is just to touch in on the Public Sector Transformation Board. We had asked for, we have an outstanding request for information about the Public Sector Transformation Board. I think members will have seen some of the reporting in the last day or two about spend of profile. So I just wanted to flag that I think it makes that even more relevant that we get that information back and we scrutinise where things are with the PSTB. Okay. So agenda item 4 is draft minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of April. This is page 7 of the meeting pack. So members, are you content that those minutes, which I'll try not to get birthday cake on, are a true reflection of last week's meeting? And I can sign them? Okay, agenda item 5 is matters arising. 5.1 relates to the Administrative Financial Provisions Bill. There is, you'll see there all the details on amendments. We've already had this stage, so it's all for academic purposes now. And we've, unless anybody wishes to put down further amendments at further stage, I'll simply say, not necessarily as chair, but as a member, I was disappointed to see if I put down a range of amendments, and I think it's, though we had taken some advice about the scope of this bill, that we weren't able to have further debates on other potential amendments given the arguably very broad scope of this bill. But anyway, that stage has passed. So, members, it's also important to point out that we will have consideration stage for the Fiscal Council Bill. I think that was at Business Committee yesterday agreed, on Tuesday the 5th of May, so immediately after the bank holiday. I presume the Business Office will be sending out deadlines for anybody who wishes to add their own additional amendments. Obviously, as a committee, we have decided not to proceed with amendments, but we did achieve, we have made some changes to the EFM and other...
The deadline, Chair, will be the previous Wednesday.
So that'll be Wednesday next week?
Yes. So there's not a massive window of time.
Yes, so get drafting if you want to do anything. Okay, members are content. 5.4, City and Growth Deals Quarterly Progress Report. Members, that's at page 31 of the meeting pack. The latest quarterly progress report prepared for the senior responsible owners in both the civil service and in both NICS and NIO has been shared with NICS board, and a copy has been provided to this committee as usual. So members, really to note any particular issues that you wanted to raise there. I'll bring in Brian Kingston in a second. One question I had wanted to ask of the team there is, given what we've obviously heard, and members will be aware, and I'm sure concerned about the announcements around University of Ulster in the past week, both universities are integral to both the Belfast and Derry city deals. I would be interested to know whether officials have any concerns about the UU announcement having any impact on the delivery of the Derry growth deal, either the practical delivery in terms of resources or the end outputs. So if members are content, I'd like us just to ask that question, if they're engaging with UU on the outworkings. So if we're content, we'll do that. And also, Brian Kingston want to come in.
Yeah, I just want to comment on the delay on the Lagan pedestrian and cycle bridge. I mean, in the report we've received, it says delay due to A5 judgment and ongoing Court of Appeal process. So we will have a difference of opinion on committee about the climate change targets and the effects that it's having on A5, A4, and from my perspective, our perspective, the inappropriateness of those targets. But to say that is the cause of a delay to a pedestrian and cycle bridge, I don't understand. I don't know, is it to do with construction costs? How is a pedestrian and cycle bridge being brought into issues of climate change when obviously it's promoting sustainable transport?
Yeah.
So I don't know whether we could. I don't know if Belfast City Council is taking the lead on this issue, or yourselves as South Belfast reps.
I think it's a fair question to ask. We can certainly ask that question. I understand, and others have expressed that concern. Deputy Chair, Mr.
Yeah, thank you. Is this all that there is? These 3 pages?
That's all we got, yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's not very much information and very unhelpful, because in the actual comments in the narrative, one of which Brian's referred to, is talking about delays, it's talking about things, and then you go down to the grid in Appendix A and it's going on track for this date, on track for that date, when there has been moves and timelines and delays. And when you get the more comprehensive report, you can see the red lights where the delays are, where things have happened. And just, is there no way when you're getting a quarterly update that would be better to actually have here's the delays rather than this? Because if you're actually just skimming through that, it looks like everything's flying and fine whenever it's actually not the case at all.
I think that's a fair question. I think there's a question about the first bullet under Belfast Region City Deal is continued progress with delivery. And then kind of, so I think those are fair questions.
Surely they have it, because they do have it, in the more comprehensive report.
As in do you have RAG? So we're busy asking for RAG ratings of
something that's a bit more visible, because you look to Appendix A.
Of any delivery. I mean, given they mentioned the Lagan Bridge, is that
they're only flagging up the ones there's issues with, I suppose.
Which is, I mean, we want them to do that, but I think we're asking, is there anything more detailed? I mean, I don't think we need to see an unbelievably detailed spreadsheet of absolutely every meeting that's happening on every touch point, but I think it would be helpful if there's a little more detail on that. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, just in terms of key outputs or job creation or community engagement, so just to give us a better feel for what's going on through the city deal investments. I think on the Lagan Bridge stuff, my understanding is because it's a major capital project, so it's like the bypass. But I mean, it doesn't hurt getting more information. I think it's the council is taking the lead on that project, and obviously they're saying they're still working at pace in terms of the procurement process and stuff, and hopefully this judgment's either going to be early summer or just soon after, I would say early autumn. So I think just getting a timeline and more detail would be good. But that's my understanding, is because it's seen as a major capital project. But
the A5 judgment, the issue that held it back was the climate change targets, So I just find it ironic that a pedestrian and cycle bridge, that's been flagged up as a cause of delay. But we'll seek the clarification.
Yeah, so 5.5 is, so if members you can we'll get those bits of follow-up on UU, the Lagan Bridge, and more detail in general on all the projects. 5.5, NI Affairs Committee correspondence to the Finance Minister regarding open book exercise. I mean, we've already discussed this, but it's the same kind of slightly confusing and confused back and forth. The NI Affairs, we are writing to the Treasury and the NIO asking about this. The NI Affairs Committee's writing to the Finance Department about this. I think it should have been agreed this would be, it should have been published in the first place. It should never have had to effectively members of this committee having to get it off people in the media and it circulating without on an unofficial basis. But we will obviously get it, and we've agreed actions already on that. Okay, 5.6, related matter. It is a reply we got from the Secretary of State to our letter seeking clarity on the status of recent allocations made to the executive and flexibility on how they have used. The Secretary of State has indicated that it's for the executive to decide how it would like to deliver a scheme comparable to the GB Energy Obligation Scheme. It is, in addition, it is also for the executive to decide how the funding of 17 million is used to support users of home heating oil. We've obviously heard more on that this week from the executive. Finally, the Secretary of State highlights the UKG intends to introduce new consumer protections for heating oil customers, and that it will work closely with the executive to ensure that protections are fit for purpose for households in Northern Ireland, which are particularly reliant on home heating oil. Members will be aware of the recent announcement to provide 300,000 low-income households with a prepaid card, £100 to purchase home heating oil. At last week's meeting, the committee also agreed to write the Department of Finance asking if there's been any representation to HMT in relation to high fuel support. I presume we're still waiting a response from that. Okay, so members, I mean, there's not a huge amount in there that's new. He doesn't tell, perhaps unsurprising, he doesn't tell us a huge amount that's new. We're going to bring in the Deputy Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think on this one, it's off the same theme as the previous one, where it's increasingly frustrating whenever you're trying to deal with these issues, this SUK financing. We're trying to get this from the Secretary of State. We're trying to get information from Treasury, and with this one in particular, with the energy payments, we had the Prime Minister saying that it was open, for an application for this. We had the Treasury officials telling the Department of Finance officials that wasn't the case. We've asked it. The Northern Ireland Affairs Committee's asking it. Ultimately, the Secretary of State and the Chair of the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee are all part of the Labour government, yet nobody seems to know what's going on right across the board. It's incredibly frustrating, and it shows the difference too when it comes to the energy payment. Whenever the £17 million was actually allocated to the executive got together and decided to allocate a further 19 million and got a plan in place to actually get that out, whereas the 81 million sort of seems to float about with unanswered questions and people trying to do their best to come up with a solution for them. So I don't know if we're talking about the open book exercise. Would it do any harm to add an expression of our discontent with the fact that we're continuing to ask these questions and they're flowing through the Affairs Committee as well? Because it just seems ridiculous that all levels of their own government and representatives don't seem to be on the same page with what's going on with our finances.
The NI Affairs Committee have fair enough for them to be asking some of these questions. I do think there's a frustration here, which is we're having to chase the NIO, who are effectively then acting as a postbox for the Treasury, who are kind of acting extremely cynically. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Obviously, there'll be comments about the effectiveness of I would have questions about the effectiveness of the executive's response to them. But in any case, yes, I'd be happy to do that. I don't think there's any particularly new information, I'm afraid, in this response from the Secretary of State.
Thank you, Chair. There is maybe not new information to us, but new information of significance, and that is that the Secretary of State said publicly that the £81 million could be reprofiled for home heating oil support. He's now conceding in this letter that that is not the case, because it's a notional amount of money that will only be spent if the executive sets up a scheme that is equivalent to the renewables obligation scheme in England. And I think that is significant, because it factored into public discourse over the course of the last month, when people were confused, when people were crying out for support, when there was dispute between parties about what that money could be used for, and that entire crisis was entirely avoidable if the Secretary of State had got his facts right in the first place. Add that to the Chancellor getting up in Parliament this week and stating that households here had received £150 off their bills in April, seemingly not knowing that Northern Ireland doesn't operate under the price cap scheme that operates in GB. So I think all of this is painting a very dim picture of UK government's understanding of the challenges facing the constituents here, and I think we do need to be fairly robust in challenging that at every opportunity. But in addition, there was an announcement made on the same date as the home heating oil support around the BICS support scheme for businesses and manufacturing businesses in particular. It's just, could we write in a similar vein to what we have previously to the department, just to find out what the status of that money is and where they are with getting the scheme put in place?
To the department here?
Yeah, just their understanding of what quantity that's likely to be and what that's likely to look
Yeah,
like.
I think that makes sense. Members are content with that? Okay. Thank you, members. Now we are going to move on to agenda item 6. We'll do it very brief. We've got officials right. We'll do agenda item 6 hopefully relatively briefly. So this is with the committee motion on the draft budget. Members in the meeting pack at page 40. You will see this item. Both the Economy and Health Committees have now provided inputs into this committee's report on the 26 to 29/30 draft budget. Both received briefing from their respective departments and have provided briefing material and copies of Hansard transcripts from oral briefing sessions. Economy Committee papers begin at page 40 of the pack, and Health Committee at page 86. Members have already agreed these inputs would be incorporated into this committee's report on receipt of the reports. So, members, you can see the oral evidence session with officials at last week's meeting at page 9 of the tabled pack, and a Hansard transcript of the session agreeing the committee's report at page 24 of the tabled pack. Both were added to the relevant appendix of the committee report. At page 104 of the meeting pack is a draft committee motion, which, if agreed, will be submitted to the Business Committee for scheduling at plenary. The clerk can provide details. So, actually, clerk, do you want to provide some details of the reading the bit?
There's not a huge amount of detail, Chair. This is the classic motion that's always used. We just update the year. So it's basically asking that the Assembly note it and that the Finance Minister take regard of its findings. It's what we call a take note debate, although such a thing doesn't actually exist in the Assembly, but it means that it doesn't require any kind of vote, and it's not open for amendment.
Yeah.
So we would hope to get that scheduled, if members agree, in the next couple of weeks.
So, members agree. I also think it would be helpful, just as a point of fact, there's not a political statement, to ask, just for the Treasury, the Finance Department, what the current status is of, like, is it still a draft budget in the sense that are they, and we've kind of already effectively asking for this. This is just an appendage, I think, to the thing we asked earlier on. Is it still live as a draft, as it were, or are they planning to start again post some engagement with the UK government? I think if we had an update on that we would need to put that as an appendix to the report. Deputy Chair.
Yeah, and thank you. And I know it's of the nature of a take note and it doesn't require a vote on it, but we're calling for the Finance Minister to give due regard, and we'll be expecting him to be responding to this.
We would be very hopeful that he would, but that'll be down to the Finance Minister.
Because within that, you would hope that that would be where he would give the update.
Yeah, well, so I hope so. It may be that it happens before that. Okay. Sorry, who was the next chair?
Sorry, I'm going back a bit, but it obviously relates to the budget. I don't know
Yeah,
whether
fine.
when we were writing in terms of asking for a copy of the open book exercise, should we actually have also been asking if they're going to agree to the executive's request to meet
Yeah,
in
that's
terms
fine.
of discussing the budgetary pressures?
Yes, I think that's.
Can we add that to the letter as well? That the Finance Committee
As in,
would support that they should be engaging.
I'm happy
with
to
the
say that. Put that in.
executive?
Yeah, and this is to the letters to the UK government.
Yes,
So I think we
sorry.
should be doing that to the NIO and Treasury. Like,
Yeah.
what is your view on the? Yeah. Okay. Grant. If we're happy with all that, members, and our members agreed to the motion.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
So I have to start to sign it now.
Yep.
It's very formal.
It is. We have a system.
Makes you feel important signing things, doesn't it?
If you
I know
want
I'm
to
not
integrate
like,
it,
but
we'll press
like
it.
I can pretend
Exactly.
for the stroke of the pen.
That would be great.
Agenda item 7 is the SL1 Whole Government Accounts Designation of Bodies NI Order 2026. Members, the SL1 today's pack is subject to a new process that was introduced on the 5th of January 2026. You're not going to have to make a decision on this today. For those of you geeky enough to be interested in these, I'm not going to look in the Deputy Chair's direction as account specialist, but this is basically where they try and consolidate every single public body into one single set of accounts. There's a clerk's memo on the Whole Government Accounts Designation Order NI 2026 at page 106, and various other documents follow on from that. Members, the purpose of the proposed statutory rule is to provide the Department of Finance with the legal authority to request financial information from designated NI departments and public bodies, and to share that information with the Treasury for the preparation of whole government accounts. 3 new bodies have been included as the 25 order was made, and there are details in the clerk's memo. are we agreed to note receipt of the SL1 and proposed statutory rule and to issue a call for views via the survey, publish the SL1, the draft SR and any other documents? Are we agreed with all that?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay. Members committee staff. Sorry, Brian.
Just in terms of the wording there, they provide department funds with the legal authority to request financial information from designated departments and public bodies. Do they all provide it?
Yeah, request is merely the language that's
Yeah.
used. It's we always use the word request, but yes, they do, and they'll be legally obliged.
It's to require it,
yes.
then, and it isn't withheld by any of the arm's length bodies?
No.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, thank you.
I mean, this should all be information that they're publishing anyway, and
Yeah.
it's not like they're not going to and ask them to produce new
Sure,
information.
the rules changed in 2022, which gave much more transparency to the ALB's finances, and that has meant then that this has kept evolving. So there's a lot more transparency and a lot more information that's out there now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
So we will consider the SL1 then on the 27th of May. And members, are you content that we don't seek a briefing? I'm happy to take a view if people do want a briefing. My own personal view is it's relatively technical. We've been through this now a few times. It's going to, if we get information back and people are deeply concerned about it, but I am, as chair, would be relatively content not to have an oral briefing on this unless members wish to think otherwise.
Yep.
Content?
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Right. So agenda item 8 is the Integr8 Programme Overview. We're going to get an oral briefing now from the officials.
Like officials.
So page 121 of the meeting pack. Hello. Yes, there is some cake there, so
Will be cake, they won't.
you might need it afterwards. No, hopefully that's okay. Members of page 121 of the pack, there is a clerk's memo on this briefing, and there's also that starts at page 121. There's various other briefings on Integr8. We've heard of Integr8 before, but we've already seen them today. We've got Paul Duffy, who's Deputy Secretary in the department overseeing Integr8 and Finance Shared Services, and Kirsty Murray, who is the Programme Director. Thank you for having us here today, first of all, and thank you for accommodating us and giving us this room, and for the tour earlier on. If you'd like to make an opening statement, Paul, and anything you want to add to, Kirsty, and then members indicate if you wish to ask questions. Apologies in advance, I'm going to have to leave for a separate appointment in about 10 minutes, but I'll leave you in the hands of the Deputy Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chair and members, and it was great to be able to host the committee here today, and to set out sort of the purpose, scale and the governance around the Integr8 programme. As you will have heard, Integr8 is a complex cross-government transformation seeking to establish modern finance and HR services designed and governed and delivered across the entire civil service. It is a significant public investment, and from the outset it's been treated and governed as such, with defined financial tolerances and independent assurance at key decision points. The estimated cost of the programme, which includes the design, the build and the implementation, as well as the ongoing finance and HR services that will be delivered to all departments up until 2034, is estimated at the moment at £294 million. This will deliver significant benefits in the effectiveness and efficiency of our finance and HR services, as well as delivering an estimated saving of £14 million per year once the services have stabilised and gone live. Within its approved scope, Integr8 involves the end-to-end redesign of all our finance and HR processes currently operating across departments, the establishment of a new operating model and a new shared service function, and the implementation of modern enterprise technology to provide timely, reliable insight to support financial management and workforce decision-making. As part of this transformation, the programme will also secure payroll services and bring HR case management and recruitment services currently outsourced under the HR contract back in-house. By redesigning how people, processes, data and technology are brought together, Integr8 provides a unique opportunity to improve the efficiency, effectiveness and the reliance of our core corporate services, enhance the experience of staff and service users, and strengthen the quality of financial and workforce information available to all departments. Given these services' impact on all civil servants, as well as suppliers, job applicants, the scale and importance of the change should be not underestimated. Members will have seen today that the programme is being delivered in close collaboration with departments, delivery partners, finance and HR professionals from across the system. A user-centred design is a core principle, and to date over 200 staff from across departments have been directly involved in shaping the new services. The programme has also engaged constructively with the trade union side, and arrangements are now in place to manage ongoing engagement through formal Whitley machinery as the programme moves into delivery. With over 1,000 staff currently involved in delivering finance and HR services, and almost 30,000 staff across the civil service and arm's length bodies impacted by them, effective change management is critical to realising the benefits and achieving value for money from this investment. A comprehensive communications, training, support approach will accompany implementation, ensuring staff are equipped to operate the new services and the benefits of the programme are realised in practice. The programme has developed a phased go-live sequence, informed by lessons from other large-scale ERP implementations. So our current plans envisage finance services being deployed in waves between April and August next year, followed by new HR services in October 27 and January 28, with final implementation by February 2028. Progression through each stage will be subject to formal decisions, with clear evidence required that services are stable, secure and deliverable before we proceed. The committee will appreciate that the programme is being delivered in a challenging financial environment, with departments facing competing priorities and constrained resources. So delivery is dependent on that sustained engagement from departments in the co-design, the testing, the training and transition, alongside departments delivering their business as usual responsibilities. There's also been periods of funding uncertainty, which have required the programme to reset and replan. And while these challenges have impacted pace, they have reinforced the importance of disciplined financial management, robust planning and transparent decision making. Programmes of this nature are inherently complex and carry risk, and unforeseen issues can arise during the design, build, testing and implementation phases. The programme has actively sought to learn from similar programmes, engaged external experts and strengthened its insurance arrangements. In closing, Chair, Integr8 is a major programme of reform designed to modernise finance and HR services and to provide stronger, more reliable support to departments in managing public money and civil service workforce. The scale of change is significant, but is being undertaken with clear accountability, strong governance, disciplined assurance and sustained engagement with staff and stakeholders. And we welcome the committee's scrutiny and will engage openly as the programme progresses. And Kirsty and I are here, Chair, to take whatever questions your members may have.
Okay, thank you. We've got several members who have asked already, have indicated they want to ask a question already, and I will have to go in a minute, but I want to get my speak in first. If it's possible to say, well, it should be possible to say how much it costs, but are you so it would be a global cost for the delivery of the project? Number one. Number two, have you formulated a number for how much it will save the civil service over I don't know, a 5 or 10 year timeline? I don't know if it's possible to answer either of those.
So just on the implementation costs,
yeah.
So to implement the programme, it's estimated now around about £96 million.
Yeah.
Was
it always that, or has it gone up?
It is changed as we have got clarity around costs. So, for example, at the moment, so one of the items where we don't have full visibility of costs is the procurement for our payroll services. So that is being procured at the moment. We have tender evaluation ongoing. So we will have a better understanding of what that cost will be for payroll. So there is, appreciate at a certain period of time, there's a series of estimates. And then as we go through procurements and get better indication of costs, that implementation cost
it's not a gotcha, honestly, but so 96 is that an increase? I don't know. 96 is an increase on what was the previous, or is it?
I think it was about 93 or 92 or 93.
In business case stage, we anticipate at 93 million.
Okay, so it's not huge. It's not under.
No.
Okay, and are you able to? Is there can you say there's going to be a?
So again,
a saving?
Yeah, so the outline business case estimated savings per annum would be £14 million once the system has gone live and stabilised. We will be able to refine those more as you may have seen earlier. We're starting now to design how the processes will actually work and who will use them and what level of automation there will be. That will give us a better indication of the amount of staff currently doing the process and what the future staff levels will be doing those particular
Okay.
processes.
And you mentioned automation there, and obviously I think it came up in our tour that there's some level of AI. Now, you're very able and clearly diligent team were saying this is all, we're confident this is, we're very judicious about the amount of information that's being used to inform whatever, I don't know, LLMs or whatever AI is being used to create chatbots, I think was the main function they were talking about. But you talked about I think you were saying the level of saving will in part depend on the level of automation. Does that mean you're expecting a head count reduction on the basis of implementing this?
So in terms of automating process, so if you imagine a lot of our work at the moment in terms of finance and the budgeting forecast is all done in spreadsheets. So there's a number of people that have to actually manipulate and produce those spreadsheets. That will be on system, and therefore those people will no longer need to do those actual tasks. So they will be available to do other roles.
It is headcount reduction, but the people might be redeployed to do other things.
Yeah. And in terms of AI, a lot of it at the moment, I imagine what the AI capability within the Oracle solution at the moment will look very different in 2 and 3 and 4 years' time. But at the moment, it's largely based around the chatbot facility. So it means that if you were wanting to understand what you were entitled to, for example, what your annual leave was, instead of trying to find an annual leave policy, you simply ask the chatbot and it gives you the information there.
And it tells you on a personal basis what your annual leave is, not what someone who is is telling you a typical person at your grade in your department. It's telling you specifically what your contracted leave is. Is that
which will be based on the policy that's in place at that time.
But so it will be that intelligent that it will be talking to the individual, not just.
Yes, it absolutely should be, and we all know that the power of AI is in good data. And there are a range of AI components that Oracle have built within their technology. Some of it in our public sector context is more useful than others. And another good one we've seen, which will be of benefit to staff, is the ability to upload expenses. So it's a case of taking a snapshot of your receipt, and the chatbot will then say, is this an expense? This is what, this is a line items we think is here. Is that right? Yes. Okay. Do you want me to send this to your line manager? Yes. And off it goes, rather than very manual process of uploading an attachment and labeling it. So it's about making the user journey easier, and as we've said, there are some of those applications will be more helpful for our staff than others, but we'll manage the rollout of those carefully.
Okay, final question from me. You say in your note to us that October 26 is is the hopeful go live for some of the HR, not like 26, 27, sorry. I'm not trying to hold you to a year earlier than you probably. How much risk is around that? Could you give a percentage? We're not going to hold you to it. We're not going to, but.
I think, if you were to ask me about my confidence in terms of a go live date starting next year for the finance, and then subsequently, I would say I would probably be around a 7 out of 10 at the moment, because I think you have to be realistic that we haven't built the solution yet. We haven't done our data cleansing and data migration. And when you start uncovering things that maybe come out of that, then that has an impact. And that's why I think it's very difficult 3 or 4 years ago, when you're developing an OBC, to say something will go live at a precise date 4 years in the future. When you haven't procured it.
That's when the October 27 date was given. So this isn't, again, it's not a gotcha, it's just trying to establish, if you were to, so then roughly what you're saying is the level is about a 30%, give or take, risk that might slip. Is that fair?
I think that's fair enough. And I think that'll change as we get closer to go live.
Okay. I'll turn over to the Deputy Chair now to ask questions and take over from me. Thank you all.
Very much. And thank you both. It's been great today. I think the big thing for me is whenever you're looking at this, I very much had in my head, I thought of it just as like an IT project, but I think being down here and talking through it and talking to all the different people, you realise it's that wider project. It's the pace, it's the people, it's the processes, and how it comes out. And I thank you for that, because it just helped me think that through a little bit better in my own understanding. I just wanted to ask you, so whenever we were seeing the stuff on the screen, so obviously a person's going to log in, and we saw it there, you go in and you've got all your own HR details, and then it'll link you to the app, to the work that you're actually doing, which is really good and it's really, really handy. But it just makes me think the security is going to be more important than ever, because if you've got all of this in the one system, you've moved everything to being electronic, are you going to have to spend a lot more than you would have in previous systems in terms of security to keep everybody's jobs so specific, control those accesses, the crossover to different departments? You know, how easy would it be for there to be a blip like this? It just, whilst it looks really good and really handy that way, it just makes me really, really nervous that you've got this one system and I could log in as an employee of this department and have access to something really confidential over here. So what does the security look like to that, and will it be much more sophisticated and more expensive to operate and control?
So I think, as Andrew maybe set out as part of the demo, so it is very much about role-based access and security. So the Oracle solution we have is an Oracle solution that's used worldwide. So this is not unique to us. So those security controls and measures are all built into the solution. I would say from a security perspective, we will be in a much stronger position than we probably currently are with 2 legacy systems that are 20 years old. And the vulnerabilities around things like cyber and that, you're more exposed with the legacy system. So I think, in a sense, the enhancement of our security is a real opportunity as part of this, and have a more stable solution going forward. But absolutely, in terms of locking down access to data, that is a really key component and a security measure that we take very seriously as part of the design of the solution.
At the minute, the management of that security is manual. So that is managed through a manual process to grant or remove someone's access to information depending on their role. With the role-based access that Paul has described, individuals would only see what they can as part of their role, and the linkage with the HR is a good thing because you must be moved in the HR hierarchy to perform your new role. That what happens there then is that the controls and the access to, say, the financials or the other information is built into that one move, so it's not lots of extra work in the background that
and would that remain manual then? That so for example, to move you to do something else that opens all those windows, will that aspect remain?
No,
it's
so that will be built
okay.
into the system. So that is, as Paul said, that gives us a lot more control. That there's going to be nothing slipped through the net.
Okay.
At the moment, it's a manual process, and somebody has to remember to do it.
Yes.
Okay.
Whereas when we built it into the actual roles, if you move from role A to role B, that access is already built into the role. So there's nobody needs to actually then manually intervene to do anything. So it is a much more secure solution in terms of access to data.
Yeah, no, just in terms of cyber attacks and it's your government system, like it's just always an area of concern. You talked about moving off the legacy contracts there, and I just wanted to ask a little bit about that. So obviously they're 2 completely different, contracts, different systems, and as you said, the HR Connect is completely outsourced, operated by Fujitsu, and then the account NI is inside sort of more in a partnership basis. But as you're moving out of ending those contracts, are you completely ending both of those, moving away from them, leaving that behind, and do you have all the IP rights that comes with that as you move forward?
So we have 2 suppliers. So you have Fujitsu and you have BT. BT support the finance system, Fujitsu the HR system. When the system finally goes live in 2028, then the contracts for both of those will have terminated by that stage. So there'll be no further contractual arrangements with either of those parties. What we have is a new contract in place with Oracle for the licensing agreement we have with them for getting access to the solution we have. The key thing that we need to take from the account now and the HR system is the data. So that's the process we're going through now, is we're extracting that data, analysing it, cleansing it, and then we'll migrate that across. We are, on the HR Connect contract with Fujitsu, we are looking at, can we bring some of the stuff in-house sooner? So we will probably need to extend that contract by a year, but what we want to do is only extend it for the absolute essentials. So we're looking at, can we bring some of the recruitment and the case management work into the civil service next year, and then only extend slightly for what's left for the likes of the payroll. So there is work undergoing. The BT contract is already being negotiated and agreed up to a final point, and that will terminate whenever we go live.
So it's complete handover. You have the access and the rights to everything then,
Yes.
and that's good. And then in terms of then the ending those contracts and moving forward, is it? And I think from talking to you, maybe answered my question already. Are you taking the learning from all of those things, because obviously both of those systems exist with a lot of issues, a lot of clunks around them, a lot of account NI. I have people in touch with me quite often. If they don't aren't in a particular format, they go and sit in a pile somewhere, and then you have to chase up that pile to get it because it hasn't matched up in a simplistic way. Like, will all of those things, like whenever you're starting into this system, are you just starting it new with a fresh idea, or you're not picking up these old systems as the starting point? You're
No.
correcting the things that were wrong with them and starting a new, better.
We're completely redesigned from scratch in a sense.
Yeah.
So it's I think the biggest learning point from both accounting and HR was the customization. So those solutions were built in 2006. It was normal to customize a solution to how you operate. In today's environment, it's very much more about the other way around. So pushing that standardization is really important, because that's what drives the efficiencies as well. So and the problem is when you heavily customize a system, you're very heavily reliant on a supplier. So every time you want to do something or tweak something or change a process, you have to go back to the supplier to rewrite that part of the solution. That won't be the case going forward. So I think the key lesson is standardize as much as possible, minimizes any changes that are required after go live then, and makes that much more of a smoother transition. The other thing I mentioned when we were talking earlier was about, previously you built a big system which sat for 15, 20 years, then into another process. What we will have is a piece of software essentially rather than a system, which will continually be updated every quarter. That standardization allows that much easier, because if you've tweaked your system in some way, then that new functionality that gets released then has to be redesigned against the tweak you've made, in a sense. So the less you do of that, the better, and that's probably one of the big lessons we've learned.
No, absolutely, and like it is a sign of the times, and it's where we need to be, and have come so far. And I remember like the move to accounting, and I remember going out as a junior member staff in the audit office, and to think of 20 years ago and where you were, I was having to go through hundreds and hundreds of invoices of March and April to see was the system actually finding year end properly, and it actually seemed so crazy that was only then, and that was still the processes, and to us that seems like such a basic thing, but that was the stage that you were at whenever accounting and I came in, so you're so much further forward now, and it's a good time to take the opportunity.
And I think that as another lesson to be learned from accounting, I was the system was fit for purpose when it went live, but there wasn't then that sort of mindset of a continuous improvement and how do you continually move with technology, whereas now, because you're actually buying a piece of software, it automatically gets updated. So that's really important in terms of being able, because we mentioned earlier about AI, it'll move on hugely in the next 2 and 3 and 4 years. If you built a system that was standalone, you would then have to reinvest, whereas now that will become readily available.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you just bring other members in then. Jerry?
Thanks, Paul. Obviously, said it's a significant investment of almost £300 million. For anybody sort of out there maybe saying, is that value for money, what would you say?
Well, the spend has been approved through a business case process, which has demonstrated that it's value for money. If it hadn't demonstrated value for money, then we would never got approval to proceed. And when you look at it in comparison to very similar programs that have happened in other jurisdictions, whilst it's not always easy to do like for like, because you'll find when other jurisdictions are sometimes doing what we see in other programs is it's simply a technology swap out. What we've taken the opportunity to do is redesign all our processes, so it's transformation rather than just a technology implementation. But if you looked at the cost of those other programs, we're not a million miles away from what you would expect to see. So there has been a degree, obviously as part of the business case process, of benchmarking and comparing with others. And there's a very similar program happening at the moment in health. So we're very close to health colleagues and watching what they're doing and understanding their program as well and what costs they're incurring. And learning from each other as well, so that if we see things happening, so there's a little bit of if they're having a conversation with the Oracle about something, then we're joining up those conversations so the public sector gets the maximum benefit.
Yeah, thanks. And all that money has been secured, hasn't it? That almost £300 million, or is it annual?
We have an annual budget process, and unfortunately,
it's being paid off per year, more or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which brings challenges itself in terms of if you don't have that uncertainty, then it makes it very difficult to plan for the next year ahead on programs that are multi-year.
And presumably all or the bulk of that cost, or that money rather, is being paid to Oracle, presumably.
It's a mixture actually. So the Oracle bit is the Oracle licensing element of it. So there will be an upfront cost where we have to buy the license and then an annual cost thereafter. There's the internal program team costs. And then there's the cost of our delivery partner, which is version 1, who's helping to design the system, and then we'll manage that service going forward.
Okay. Just a couple of questions on that. So, I think you said the new system, sort of Oracle are developing it in conjunction, obviously, with yourselves and your team. Who owns what? Sort of like during this process or towards the end of the process, is it still the system sort of owned by Oracle, and obviously staff here can operate it, or how does that sort of dynamic work?
Yeah, so what we've really purchased is a license to use a piece of software. So at the end of that licensing period, we don't. It's a bit like your Microsoft license. You know, if you decide no longer to renew your license, then you don't have the application. So it's very similar. So we have procured a license for the next 10 years to use the Oracle solution. Towards the end of that period, there will have to be a decision taken: do you continue with Oracle or do you go to one of the other big providers?
No, just thank you. And final question. I mean, obviously the procure the license at £300 million to me sounds a lot. I mean, obviously I'm not working in the sector, and you're probably going to quote benchmarks and other alternatives to me. Something came across my desk recently, and I don't claim to be an expert in it at all, but open source alternatives. So there's other for programs that aren't kind of your Microsofts or your bigger organisations. Like, is that a model that could be used? And the other final question is back to the Deputy Chair on the data protection stuff. Did the department carry out a data protection impact assessment? Because I'd be concerned that all that important information and data is in the one place, and could obviously it could be accessed potentially quite easily by somebody if they wanted to.
Yeah, I'll ask Kirsty to come in on the data issue.
Certainly, yes. And maybe it's worth clarifying the 300 million as well, Jerry. So what we have covered in our outline business case is the cost of investing in delivering this change, so taking from the old to the new, and then the ongoing costs of the contracts that the programme needs to enter in order for the new world to work. So that is the total cost of the 300 million. So the programme itself, this change is that we've described as that 97 million Paul mentioned. Of the remaining money, about 81 million is the Oracle contract spend, so it's not the full 300. And then there's the cost of our transformation, the ongoing, the payroll service, the cost of our in relationship with version 1 and their managed service support to help us maintain that system and keep it working for us, and as well as the service wrappers technology piece that we need as well. So there's more in there than just the Oracle. In terms of the data itself, we have taken a lot of time to engage with our data colleagues. We did a data protection assessment, and we have engaged with Oracle to look at the approach to their data management and ensuring the security around that. So our data is hosted in what's called the government cage. So that is essentially a smaller data centre that is only accessed by government customers like ourselves that have the same data requirements. So everyone who goes into that data centre has very high levels of clearance. We're taking a lot of care there. So on the data front, we have secured access to as safe an environment as we can get for this information, bearing in mind it all exists at the minute and it's all hosted somewhere at the minute. So with that relationship with Oracle, we benefit from all the work they do to maintain the security and all the continual patching, and that's not a load that is on us to continue to keep on the front foot when it comes to the cyberspace, Jerry, and we benefit from the scale of resourcing that they can put on that front.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Brian?
Okay, thank you, Deputy Chair. And as Deputy Chair said, I think our visit today has demonstrated the value of coming out to visit premises and talking to the range of staff and seeing a demonstration of the new system. So it's definitely improved my understanding. Still more to learn about it, but you can see the practicality of combining the HR services and finances into one system, and one that will continue to evolve over time. I haven't seen any mention of the Transformation Fund, unless I missed it. So this is not supported from the Transformation Fund, is that right?
That's right. So the programme stood up before the Transformation Fund, but it is being funded through the Executive's normal budget process rather than through the Transformation Fund.
Right. And in terms of savings, so if my notes are correct, I think you said it would generate £14 million per annum savings, and the total cost of 294 million up to, was it 2034 or?
Yeah.
And you've said a bit about the breakdown of that. So do you think it would actually produce more savings than that? How do you calculate those savings? And I'm thinking about, during the presentation, it was explained to us how this will provide more visibility about the workforce and the deployment of workforce, and don't put words in your mouth, but does it improve the opportunities to move staff between departments? Because there's a criticism of the civil service quite often it's siloed. People tend to stay in one department for their career. And will there be more opportunities where there's needs to move staff, either for short term or longer term? Will it increase those opportunities?
Yes, so in terms of the savings, so an outline business case, and so that was 2023, we had estimated the savings would be £14 million per annum once the system has gone live and stabilised. And that's largely driven from automating and bringing manual processes onto the solution. Mm-hmm. So at the moment we have 1,000 staff involved in finance and HR activities. And I think, I can't remember exactly, but it's round about 120 staff just doing finance and budgeting. The opportunities of moving all that online, on system and automating will generate a need for less staff to do those very manual processes. So that's probably the main dimension of how the 14 million was calculated. Now, as I say, it was calculated a number of years ago. We're now going through the process of actually designing and building the system and understanding who will be doing what and what level of automation can we build in. So as we get closer to go live, we will be refining those savings and looking for other opportunities to where we can identify further savings. And some of it is going to be difficult to quantify. So, for example, 10 or 20% of my time during the week may be spent trying to manage either off-system spreadsheets or trying to navigate a clunky HR system. That should all disappear. So every individual should have a saving in a sense and allow them to dedicate more time to doing the job that they're there to do, rather than trying to deal with finance and HR systems that aren't efficient and effective. So we should see further opportunities as the solution develops over time. And it also will give us much more. I suppose one of the biggest benefits for me from this solution is the data and the insights that it will provide. So we will have much more clarity around our financial position and our workforce, and amalgamating that data is really important in terms of trying to understand our resources and how best they can be redeployed. And there will be, we're working very closely with our colleagues in HR on the people strategy. So the work that they're doing around workforce planning, job families, professions, that will be built into the new solution as well. So people will have very clear career paths and be able to identify opportunities for them to move, not within or necessarily across departments, but look at a career path in a particular profession, which may take them into multiple departments throughout their career. So there are real opportunities to enrich what our staff can do, and also give them greater opportunities to avail of those.
Including opening up other potential positions that they could move to, or, as you say, career paths.
And this will create, so for example, if we're starting to remove a lot of that transactional work, so we have a number of accountants in the civil service who are processing information on spreadsheets. What we really want them to do is to look at the data and give us their insight. So analyse it, provide the insight, help inform decision making, that is a much richer role for an accountant than to try and reconcile what one spreadsheet said one month to the next. So there's real opportunities there to get the best out of this talent that we have as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, it sounds like the 14 million is maybe based on workforce savings, but you feel there's potential for other greater tangible benefits and efficiencies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, one of the things that, it's very difficult whenever you're, writing a business case 4 years before you go live to be very precise around some of these numbers. But it's important that we, try to have some indication of what that may be to help demonstrate the value for money. But as we get closer to go live, those will be refined, and there will be, I suspect, further opportunities.
I asked this question earlier on, but if you could say a wee bit, I was asking on the finance side of things about AI being built into the system to help identify any causes for concern if there was irregular spendings or excessive spending, any potential error or fraud, that those will be flagged up within the financial monitoring, or if you can say something about that.
Yeah, so I think, as I said, I think the Oracle solution will evolve and greatly over the next few years. And the huge benefit that AI will offer is that we will have a significant amount of data, and for an individual to try and spot patterns or anomalies, that can be challenging. So the opportunity to be able to use AI then and machine learning to sort of crunch those numbers and to flag those particular issues will absolutely be there for the future. And I think it will feed into also, we've had some discussions with the Northern Ireland Audit Office about what opportunities that would present for them too. So they have a huge exercise every year in terms of trying to identify those sorts of issues. The opportunity for them to use a tool like AI should also release savings within the Audit Office and capacity within the Audit Office to do other things.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Brian. Harry?
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Chair, and good to be here today, good to see you. We know it is a complex and secure system, but is it easily updated or adapted?
So yes, so the updates will come once we go live. So the way Oracle work is that every quarter they release patches, they release new functionality that they've tested and then released to all Oracle customers. So as new technology comes on board, as if AI starts to develop and evolve, if there was a new AI tool that they develop, they would roll that out as part of their quarterly patching. So there's a real opportunity for us then to have that continuous improvement and new technology going forward. So I think, and as I said earlier, that's one of the lessons learned from previous systems where you build a system and in some cases they're outdated by the time they go live. In a sense, the system should never go out of date.
So it can be adapted to suit the needs.
But so the adoption bit, we have to be very careful with, in that what we don't want to do is tailor the system to meet our needs, thinking we're any different than any other large organisation or government organisation. The solution is been built around best practice finance and HR. There would have to be a very strong argument why we couldn't adopt best practice. So you want to minimise that adoption as much as possible.
Okay.
The real power of flexibility here we want to tap into is the flexibility of scale. So we want to produce a solution that other arm's length bodies, for example, could come on to and make use of. So it's that dimension of adaptability and flexibility that we would want to leverage here is to build something that is on best practice that maybe smaller bodies could come on to and use and experience the benefit of as well.
And the old systems lasted roughly about 20 years. What do you think the lifespan will be of the new system?
Well, I think given that it is continually updated, I don't think it'll have a definitive lifespan, so it should evolve over time. The accounting eye system, whilst it was built and developed and put in place in 2006, there have been changes and modifications to it over that time. It's just they've been limited in terms, and because they're heavily customized, any modifications are very costly. So that has minimised the amount of technological change there has been in legacy systems.
And what has been the greatest challenge to date with the new system, would you say?
That's a good question.
Depends what week you
Yes,
ask it, I
yes.
suppose.
Yeah.
I would say, been a series. I suppose there's been a bit of a stop-start at times with the programme,
Okay.
which has been hugely challenging. So there was a period in 23-24 where we had no funding confirmed until November of that financial year, which meant we had to pause the programme. So we lost a lot of good people who were in the programme. We then had to go through, when it stood up again, of going out and recruiting all those of replacement people again. But we're not delivering or developing a system where we're doing that. So there's been a lot of stop-start because of, I suppose, funding uncertainty. And I suppose, back to Jerry's point, if it's a multi-year programme, having certainty of what your funding's going to be over that life cycle actually will deliver a better value for money solution. When you stop-start, you increase costs. So funding's been an issue, and I suppose just the capacity of our stakeholders to co-design a process with us while they're very busy doing a day job are the two, I suppose, biggest challenge. And the last one, sorry, I know you asked for one. The last one, probably the moment, is just around data. And just, that is, in these programmes, that is probably one of the risks that pops up in most programmes. So we're going through that process at the moment, and that's probably one of the high-risk areas.
And anything to add to that?
No, I would definitely echo what Paul has said. I mean, I think the bottom line is this programme is complex, and it's a fantastic opportunity for us when we're introducing new technology to correct some of the other parts of how finance and HR work that don't particularly serve the outcomes that we want to achieve. But that does require extra effort and extra thought, and adds a new dimension of management into what we need to deliver. So I would definitely say that while we have had that challenge with ensuring we're involving all the right people at the right point in time, we've definitely been met by the business who have grasped this opportunity and see this as a fantastic way forward and what is needed to address all the pain points we know exist, and whether it's from the experience of an employee, the experience of a budget holder, the experience of a job applicant, the experience of a supplier, or the experience of those people who are sitting delivering our finance and HR. So I would say we have been met with that, but there's a lot to be balanced across this, and it is very complicated, and there's lots of interdependencies that maybe aren't immediately obvious, and the more you get into the detail, the more those things are understood, then it just creates more to manage, coordinate.
The other thing I would just add, sorry, it's more of an opportunity the programme is presented in that, not the benefits the programme will deliver, but there's been a little bit of, we've had to work very closely, for example, with HR and finance colleagues to say, we need to update our policies and processes. And this is a real opportunity to do it. So if you can update your policies and processes, then we can build a solution that supports that. So that's been a bit of a catalyst for driving some of that work as well. So that's been a sort of a secondary benefit of having a programme that requires certain things to be done that may have taken longer than if it hadn't been for a programme driving it.
And just to finish on, moving from BT and Fujitsu to Oracle, were like BT and Fujitsu not competitive? Did they not come to you and say, look, we can do this for you, we can sell you? Was there any? There was a
robust procurement process we put in place, and all suppliers had an opportunity to tender for the work. We went through an evaluation and selected the best value option for the civil service.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Good answer. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for the presentation and for hosting us today. I suppose on the one hand, I mean, it makes sense to move to digital from a manual system. I mean, we were in LPS recently, and you can just see how that manual system slows everything down. So obviously, to speed up the system, to integrate it, to have better outcomes at a quicker pace makes sense. I suppose the bit I wanted to touch on was around, obviously, what are the impacts in terms of departments here is the siloed approach and mentality to things in terms of delivering outcomes. So do you believe that this will start to deal with that, and are there opportunities that this could be widened? I mean, once you get, the finance and kind of HR functions up and running, that this could be developed further out in terms of trying to break down the siloed approach to departments here?
I think there's a an opportunity to have a more holistic insight
Yeah.
in terms of our finance and our workforce. So I think at the moment it's very difficult within a department because everything, on the finance side it's very difficult because everything's manually driven and on spreadsheets, and it's very difficult to make that join of where you can see opportunities even across an individual department that's quite complex. So it will join up a lot of things that happens in departments. And then at the most strategic level, the executive level, the information will be more timely, and you will have the opportunity to do what if scenarios and some scenario planning around, if you were to do X, Y, and Z, what is the outcome? That's very cumbersome to do with spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So the system will allow you to do that. So there's definitely an opportunity there. The other thing we're very keen on is ensuring that, so when you think about the health and education sectors, the amount of spend that happens out in those areas, is how we can bring their data in, and that then allows sort of more holistic presentation of the public sector spend that's happening.
Yeah.
So that is something that certainly is, and some of these things are day two issues,
Yes.
but the opportunities will be there to do it, and in the facility to do it. Whereas at the moment it's much too difficult and clunky to be able to do that.
Aye, so hopefully with that up-to-date and live information then all readily available, the opportunity to innovate more, and I suppose in terms of that being risk averse, we're too risk averse,
Yeah.
to actually start to try new ways of working and stuff. The other bit was just around then, I suppose the inclusion work, because obviously across all of these systems, and particularly for staff and that system, around reasonable adjustments, people with disabilities, childcare, those in terms of flexible working. Do you believe the system can respond to some of those needs in terms of the inclusion piece within the system overall?
So we're not changing any policies. We're
Yeah.
around those particular issues. So the processes will be there to hopefully make that much more easier to navigate if
Right.
you're looking for a reasonable adjustment. And it'll also, I think, because we talked a little bit about the chatbot, it'll also give people information that's maybe difficult to find within the current policies. So if you wanted to know, am I entitled to X, which policy do I go and look at, and where do I find that policy, and whereabouts within a 100-page policy do I find that piece
Yeah.
of information. Whereas when you have a chatbot, it'll be a matter of asking it a question and it will throw it up for you. So the information will be there much easier for people to understand entitlements and things, and also then to actually systemize that or put it into a process will be easier to navigate, and people to have visibility. So if somebody was asking for something, they should be able to see where it is in the process, rather than it going into a black hole and being anxious about when am I getting an outcome. So that should certainly help
They
with
should be
that.
able to track that then, hopefully through the online system.
Yeah, and the other thing we're doing a little bit of work with is some of our groups around disability and things in terms of inclusion and access to the system. So the system's easier for people to navigate
Yeah.
who may have a disability or have a challenge around how you navigate around a particular system. So we've got some of those groups as part of our co-design process, making sure those processes are easier to use for certain members of our workforce.
Key point, because it takes me half an hour trying to find something online. I'm still a pen and paper. But the other bit was just around, I suppose it was the account DNI, and I know one of the criticisms with the current system is the high cost per transaction. And do you believe then there will be improved outcomes around that?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question, but I'm happy to
it's-
look at it and come back to you.
And the other wee one was around obviously data, and this is the way of the world now, but obviously data and who owns it and who has access to it is key, particularly when you're looking at some of the global digital companies. And it's just around I know they touched on it in there briefly in terms of who can access it within the civil service as well, but what are the firewalls and the safety mechanisms then in terms of particularly, with external companies, that is there a firewall there then around people's data, and I suppose those who procure services that we're keeping their data tight as well?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. There is. So with a cloud-based technology platform like the platform we are moving to, it means the technology is, or the data is stored on a server in a cloud, a data center. The data center where our data will be is a data center used exclusively for government bodies like ourselves. That's what is referred to as the government cage. So there are additional security requirements and wrappers around that. So the information's not sitting in with other more corporate organisations. It's standalone. We have we've done our data protection assessment or the data impact assessment, and we are working with all the suppliers and all the individuals around this space. There are very tight security requirements even around the clearance those individuals must have and where they must be located before they can come and have a look at anything or do anything for us. So that's certainly built in, Deirdre, and similarly with the role-based access that Paul described there too, that we are building in by design that individuals should only see the information they need to do their job, all the information they need to do their job, so that counts too also on the kind of reporting and analytics capabilities and the information that's just pushed to people. But it means if I moved to a different department in the morning, I would no longer access DOF information, the DOF staff information. It would be my new line management structure in my new department. So that is the approach we are taking.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Deirdre. And no one else indicated? No? Okay. Well, thank you very, very much, Paul and Kirsty. That was really informative. And again, thank you for hosting us and for your hospitality. And if you could extend our thanks as a committee to all of your staff and team for speaking to us, taking the time and being so welcoming. We've really, really appreciated it and look forward to seeing how the project progresses. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members. So we'll move to agenda item 9, which is the... Wait till the motorbikes go past. Sorry, it was noisy. Agenda item 8, Marriage and Civil Partnership Bill. We've got an oral briefing from the Department of Finance. Yes, and yeah, you come on ahead there. Yeah, if everyone's happy, I was just gonna stay here. Yeah. Just to ask members, are you in agreement that Hansard should report on this session? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So members, if I could refer you to page 135 of the meeting pack for the clerk's memo on the oral briefing from the Department of Finance officials on the Marriage and Civil Partnership Bill. The papers provided include the Department of Finance's briefing paper at page 138 of the meeting pack. This includes delegated powers memorandum for the bill at page 146 of the pack, the copy of the bill and explanatory and financial memorandum of the bill at pages 152 to 165. And the Department of Finance's report on the marriage law consultation at page 172 of the meeting pack. Members ask for your agreement that we, in line with the agreed processes, refer the delegated powers memorandum for the bill to the examiner of statutory rules for advice on the delegated powers within the bill. Members, are you in agreement? Yep, thank you. And members, I would ask for your agreement to issue a call for views to other statutory committees on the bill provisions, with further consideration given to a committee stage timetable and comprehensive call for evidence at a future meeting. You agreed? Yep. Great. Thank you. Okay, so we welcome to the meeting Michael Foster, the Head of Civil Law Reform, the Departmental Solicitor's Office, Dr. Martin Terrell, Policy Advisor, the Civil Law Reform DSO, and Maurice Dowling, Policy Advisor, Civil Law Reform DSO. Get everybody right there. Thank you very much. You're very, very welcome. And Michael, I just invite you to make an opening statement.
Thank you, Chair. Chair and members, thanks for the opportunity to assist your scrutiny following second stage on Monday. The committee will be familiar with the policy intentions from previous oral briefings given, and we have provided an updated paper for today's session, which we hope you'll find useful. I intend only to make a short opening statement. This bill does two main things. First, it brings non-religious belief marriage fully within the statutory framework of the 2003 Marriage Northern Ireland Order, placing belief bodies on the same legal statutory footing as religious bodies for the purposes of registering officiants and granting temporary authorisations. Secondly, it raises the minimum age of marriage and civil partnership to 18 without exceptions, and introduces an offence aimed at conduct intended to cause a child to enter a marriage. It also updates overseas recognition rules and includes necessary consequential and saving provisions. To assist the committee's scrutiny, Chair, I will briefly outline the key elements of the bill. Clauses 1 to 4 deal with belief marriage, and the bill implements the direction of travel that followed the court cases in 2017 and cements the temporary arrangements which are currently in place. It amends the 2003 order by inserting religious or belief throughout relevant articles of that order, and enables belief bodies to nominate officiants on the same basis as religious bodies. It also includes regulation-making powers to prescribe qualifying requirements, ensuring appropriate safeguards, and that aspect will involve further policy development and a further assessment of the need and scope for such additional requirements. Clauses 5 to 7 then deal with minimum age. The bill introduces a clear universal minimum age of 18 for both marriage and for civil partnership, and that aligns us with several neighbouring jurisdictions and international safeguarding standards. Clause 6 further strengthens protections by creating an offence targeting conduct intended to cause a child to marriage. Clauses 8 to 10 of the bill then deal with overseas recognition, consequential amendments and saving provisions. And we have provided the committee with a delegated powers memorandum which outlines the limited delegated powers that we propose to place in the bill. The main one of those being the qualifying requirements powers, which, as noted, may be employed to help future-proof the 2003 framework if the need to do so is deemed to be necessary. And if those regulations are proposed, they will be subject to scrutiny by this committee and debated by the Assembly using the affirmative procedure. The consequential power in Clause 12 is standard for bills of this type, with affirmative procedure applying if primary legislation is amended and negative procedure otherwise. In terms of implementation, the GRO is responsible for the operational aspects of the marriage law system, and they will update the relevant forms, guidance, materials and IT systems to reflect the revised statutory framework, with these adjustments expected to be manageable within existing resources and representing a continuation of the processes already operating under the marriage order and under temporary arrangements. Chair, in summary, the bill places belief marriage on a clear statutory footing and raises the minimum age for marriage and civil partnership to 18, strengthening safeguarding, and my colleagues and I are happy to take whatever questions yourself and the committee may have at this stage.
Thank you, and thank you for briefing us today and throughout. You've kept us up to date with how this has been progressing. Just wanted to ask you, so in terms of this, we're currently operating under the temporary arrangements following the Smith judgment, and then, it's my understanding then that this legislation will just put that into the framework of the order. Just wanted to ask, what legal risks or gaps would exist or do exist if you were to continue in that way without bringing it under the order?
Well, the legal risk is that over time we don't have that firm statutory framework in place. That could, in theory, be subject to challenge in due course. But what I would say is that those temporary arrangements have been in place now for, well, close to 7 or 8 years. They've worked very effectively. We haven't received any particular concern about the nature of the status for belief marriage. The court, particularly the High Court, were very, very clear that action needed to be taken. And the Court of Appeal, while it's taken a slightly different approach to the issue, also took the view that humanist marriages should be able to be performed in this jurisdiction. And since then, of course, we've had over 5,000 of those types of marriages without any particular concerns being raised.
So it's just as simple as moving the temporary arrangements that are already existing within the legal framework to future-proof and secure the process?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's really cementing what is already in place. Yeah. From a process point of view, anybody who has had a humanist marriage in the last few weeks will notice no difference when this comes into operation. It will be the exact same process.
Yeah. And in the debate during the week, the Minister had said that it's something I was thinking about bringing forward. He'd referenced his consideration of the removal of the ability to profiteer off the solemn part of the ceremony. Is that something that's being developed through yourselves, through the Minister, in terms of, is there going to be an amendment on this? Because it's something I was considering that it was an opportunity to do, and just when he mentioned it himself, I wondered what work was going on with that.
Well, the simple answer to that, Chair, is that the statutory framework already provides for it. The 2003 Marriage Northern Ireland Order has specific provision there that if a officiant is deemed to be operating for the purposes of profit and gain or is running a business of marriage, that their registration will be cancelled by the Registrar General. So it's already in place. Now,
For marriage, but not for the belief side. So does there need to be an amendment to make it cover it for
will
everything?
apply equally to both religious and belief marriage.
Okay. So whenever they're all in the equal status, that same provision
Same
then
provision
applies for
applies.
them all?
It's-
Okay.
What we're doing is essentially updating the 2003 order by every time you see in the 2003 order the word religious, it will now be religious or belief.
Yes.
So what applies currently to religious bodies will apply going forward to belief bodies. So the issue of profit and gain, it is a tricky issue, because what one might think is profit and gain might be another person's due compensation for work that they have undertaken with a couple in order to scope out and carve out a particular ceremony. And that's probably slightly more apparent with a belief marriage, where typically it's not the situation which you find in many religious marriages, where the officiant knows the couple and has spent a lot of time with them in other ways. In belief scenarios, it tends to be more that a belief officiant or celebrant will get to know the couple in advance through a number of meetings, and will help get a sense of what their philosophical beliefs are and what their understanding of a marriage ceremony is all about, and then go back and present a bespoke ceremony on their behalf.
Yeah. No, that's really useful. Thank you very much. I'm just going to bring in other members. Owen?
Thank you, Deputy Chair. And obviously one of the issues that was discussed at second stage was that no-fault divorce isn't going to form part of this particular bill. Why is that, and when are we likely to see legislation around divorce?
Okay, well, I just want to be clear, and I think the Minister maybe did make this clear on Monday, that there was never any intention that no-fault divorce would form part of this particular bill. It's a separate work stream, and one which members will know that we consulted on last year between June and finishing in October. The Minister has considered the outcome of that work and had brought policy proposals to his ministerial colleagues. I think he covered this in the second reading, and to an extent this is more in the political space, and I maybe don't want to get into too much detail about it, but at this stage it's looking particularly unlikely that divorce reform will happen during this mandate.
Okay, and in terms of timelines around that, I mean, when would you need a decision from the Minister for the Executive in order for that to be achievable within the mandate?
Well, I'll speak in general terms if that's okay.
Yep.
Typically a bill will take a minimum of 3 months to draft. We are now at the end of April, and as yet we do not have executive approval to proceed with the policy that was outlined by the Minister. So the Speaker has given an indication that any legislation to stand a realistic chance of proceeding during this particular mandate will need to be introduced before the summer. So I think, stepping back from that, we are now past the point where a bill would need to have been underway in terms of its drafting for it to stand a chance to be introduced during this mandate.
Yeah. No, that's helpful, Michael. Thank you. And then just turning to, again, another issue that isn't dealt with in the bill, which from my perspective, and I appreciate some other members might disagree, is the missed opportunity around recognition of independent celebrants. And I know when we talk about independent celebrants, we often get into the space of how do you regulate and how do you protect against profiteering and all of those issues. But for me, there's a more fundamental argument, and that is not everybody fits in neatly to either wanting a belief marriage or wanting a religious ceremony. There are lots of people, particularly same-sex couples, who may be of faith and be affiliated with a particular mainstream church, which will not solemnise or recognise their marriage. So they're not humanists, so a humanist ceremony is entirely inappropriate, but cannot get married in their faith group. So is there any work, even if it's not the Minister's intention to bring forward a recognition of independent celebrants in this bill, is there any work ongoing to monitor developments in England and Wales or to create opportunity to do that in the future?
Okay, well, there's probably two separate aspects to that. Firstly, the first point I'd like to make is that belief marriage is not confined to humanist marriage. Belief is a broader subset, if you like, of marriage. So in those circumstances, there may well be other groups who will come forward who maybe offer a slightly different outlook. To an extent, we've seen examples of that. There are some organisations that have registered through GRO who offer what you might not describe as a typical religious outlook, but they offer something that can combine aspects of different parts of that. So, I mean, there is an element of that already within the system. In terms of independent celebrants, though, that is untested policy water in these islands, and indeed, by and large, throughout the world. We are and have been keeping an eye on the developments in England and Wales, bearing in mind that that was a Law Commission report. The government has indicated that they want to take forward reform in this area, but they haven't said what that reform is going to look like, and had indicated that they were going to consult on it during the early part of 2026. We haven't as yet seen a consultation emanating from the British government, but we will obviously keep a very careful eye on that and see how it develops in that jurisdiction. They're coming at it from a pretty different perspective than we are, though. They have a very different system of marriage law, where it is the building that is registered as opposed to the officiant. And they obviously haven't recognised humanist marriage in England and Wales. So again, they're starting from a different starting point than we are. But I think the Minister, broadly speaking, has an open mind in this. But he also recognises that there are difficult regulatory hurdles to consider in terms of the particular issue of profit and gain, and there could potentially be unintended consequences if we open up the market, if you like, for independent celebrants to operate on a business perspective, because therefore it wouldn't really be fair to not permit religious and belief bodies to operate on a profit basis, and that could have ramifications that we'd need to very carefully think through before we would bring forward legislation.
No, that's helpful, Michael. Thank you, Deputy Chair. That's big.
Brian?
Okay, thank you, and thanks for your attendance today. Yeah, certainly a marriage should be a joyful occasion, and by and large it is, but it's also a very solemn occasion, and the commitment made is a serious and lifelong commitment. So in terms of the wording here for belief bodies, it's very broad, and I appreciate you've made the point this is just updating to the 2003 order. So for the definition of religious body, substitute religious or belief body, meaning an organised group of people which A, meets regularly for common religious worship, that's the religious side, or for belief body, or the principal object of which is to uphold or promote philosophical beliefs. So a belief body is just an organised group of people who uphold or promote philosophical beliefs. So I'd have to say that's extremely broad. And you've referenced the Registrar General, and I know it's different in different parts of the UK and Ireland. I don't want to give an example, but there could be quite extreme groups that could seek to hold marriages in a way that almost undermines the solemnity of marriage, and the seriousness, because it's such a broad openness to who can conduct marriages.
Well, what I would say, maybe to assuage some of those concerns, is that the marriage framework under the Marriage 2003 order already provides powers for the Registrar General to cancel the registration of anybody who's deemed not to be a fit and proper person.
Mm-hmm.
So to an extent, and that I think has been employed, if not in this jurisdiction, but certainly in comparative jurisdictions, to essentially nip in the bud any applications for registration from like completely random bodies who are trying to claim they're religious. The one example I give of that is the rather infamous case of the, and I might not get the terminology absolutely correct, and I apologise in advance for doing so, but it was the spaghetti flying monsters.
Yeah.
And I think that their idea of a marriage ceremony wouldn't necessarily fit in with the vast majority of people's views on the issue.
Yeah.
And they were not permitted, and would not be permitted even under this legislation. There's no promotion or upholding of any particular philosophical belief associated with that group. So there are safeguards there already. And given the fact that in theory, with the temporary arrangements, these types of belief bodies could already have attempted to bring forward applications for registration, I don't think there's an awful lot of concern from the department's perspective that that's likely to happen. And if it does, we think that the tools are there already for the Registrar General to refuse those applications.
Right. And can you just clarify, who's the Registrar General in Northern Ireland then?
Well,
Is that is that their title, or?
the Registrar General is the title. So the Registrar General currently is also the Chief Executive of NISRA, who you know quite well, Dr. Philip Wales.
Okay.
But the day-to-day operation of the marriage system falls to the Deputy Registrar General, who has also appeared in front of the committee. They're the staff in GRO. They're a small unit in GRO.
Okay. And one other question, Deputy Chair. Again, the paper we have explains the minimum age which this bill is to be raised to 18. Again, in Scotland, for example, it's still 16. So
It is, but they are currently consulting and raising the age to 18.
okay. But so just from my understanding, if someone was married at 16 or 17 in Scotland and then moved to Northern Ireland, would that have any impact on the status of their marriage? It's just purely that they've been married in that jurisdiction.
So
So if somebody is married at a younger age somewhere else, which is legal there, and they then move to Northern Ireland, is there any impact?
no is the simple answer. Now, the caveat to that is that our legislation would prevent a 16 or 17-year-old who is resident here from going to Scotland
Okay.
simply to marry
Yes.
and then come back.
Okay. Good.
But if there were two 16 or 17-year-olds who were domiciled in Scotland and for whatever reason got married in Scotland and then moved here before they were 18, we would still recognise their marriage.
Right. So, how would it prevent to 16 or whatever somebody who's under 16 or 17 here going to Scotland to get married?
Because anyone who is ordinarily resident in this jurisdiction
Yeah.
cannot do that. It wouldn't be recognised under our law.
It would be stopped at Scotland.
No, well-
would they be checking where the person is normally resident?
Quite probably. I can't speak obviously for the law and practice in Scotland in terms of that. Currently, a 16 or 17-year-old can get married in Scotland without parental consent, so they have a even more generous system for 16 and 17-year-olds than we do. But
And there's some countries obviously would permit marriage at a younger age, 14,
There are.
15, whatever.
those would still be recognised in this jurisdiction under our common law.
Right. But it'd be up to the country in question to prevent someone,
Yeah.
quite frankly, you could have someone being trafficked, at a young age, for the purpose of being married in a foreign country and then brought back here.
Anybody who is ordinarily resident in this jurisdiction will not be able to get married anywhere in the world and have their marriage recognised in this jurisdiction.
Yeah. There might be a rule for the authorities here to be aware, if they feel that is happening and someone has been coerced, into an early marriage elsewhere.
What I would say is there's been no evidence presented to us that that's an issue in this jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Jerry?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Just the belief body stuff. So obviously humanists are kind of, don't think mentioned in the bill, but it's kind of implied that's the main organisation this is relating to. can you maybe, you also said in response to one about there's a broader subset of sort of belief organisations. Do you have a rough idea how many? And
Well, there are currently 4 bodies that have registered with GRO under the temporary arrangements. The Humanists, the Northern Ireland Humanists, are the main body. They've conducted something like 96% of all belief marriages that have taken place in this jurisdiction to date. There are 2 or 3 other smaller bodies who are obviously much smaller in size.
are they humanists but of a different kind of persuasion type
Those other 3 bodies are. Now, as well as that, there are a couple of bodies who in relatively recent times have registered with the GRO under the religious side, who define themselves as spiritualist. Now, they have been subject to some degree of criticism from the humanists, which I'm sure committee members will get to hear about in due course, but they wouldn't really strike you as being religious in the sort of common sense of the word, and they may well in due course redefine themselves as belief bodies, but at this stage we don't know.
So sorry, so the 96% are the humanists and the other 4% is the spiritualist organisations, right? Or
The other 4% of belief marriages would be the 3 other smaller humanist groups. But bear in mind, religious bodies come in all shapes and forms. I have a list here, should members wish to see it at some point, of over 120 different religious bodies within this jurisdiction.
okay, maybe another time, but yeah, maybe. Thanks. The other question was, yeah, just to clarify. So, isn't it currently the case if you're having a humanist ceremony, you have to go to City Hall, for example, with the registrar?
No.
Before you don't.
No.
You do currently, no?
No.
All right. Okay, so there'll be no change then after that because it doesn't exist.
Since the court case in 2017,
Okay,
that
yeah.
was the
That was the case
situation
before.
before
Okay.
the courts intervened in 2017. That
There's been no change because that's been changed from 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah. Finally, just sure. I mean, obviously, it's not related to this bill, but is there any gaps or things that the minister or you are looking at in terms of humanist ceremonies around deaths? Anything that's
well, I think the simple answer I can only give you is that doesn't fall to my team. I'm not aware of any ongoing work in it.
Well, thanks.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks.
I don't know, Michael, if you said you had a list there, have you, would be agreeable to share the list? Maybe it wouldn't do
Absolutely.
any harm for us for evidence, just as we're looking into the scrutiny of those types of bodies. That would be really, really helpful.
No problem at all.
But
Just a wee quick one, Michael, you touched on, sorry, on that there's untested policy area in terms of the independent elements, and you'd say it in terms of what is happening across the water, but I'm assuming you're looking at the south as well, because we're on an island here, in
So
terms of making sure there's...
They have no plans
Yeah.
for independent celebrants. We met with the team, our counterparts in Dublin, less than a month ago, and they've indicated there are no current plans to bring forward
But
reform.
just in your policy development, you're looking north, south, east and west
Oh,
as
yeah.
well, just to make sure there's a okay, thank you.
thanks very much, Adrian. Michael, whenever we have you here, I had raised just at the start of the committee, I'd asked a question to the Minister around the Jades Law expansion. Has that fallen to your team? So the Minister had, he had said that he'd asked the team to, start a little bit of work on that. Are you in a position to say anything about that? Or?
Well, I mean, we've been aware of this for a while now. I think the minister. We're actually meeting the minister on Monday to discuss it further. So I'm probably limited to an extent as
Okay.
to what I can say at this stage, but it's very much on our radar.
Yeah, no, that's good to know, and we can kept up to date with that. Owen, do you want to come in?
Yeah, mine's actually in the previous item, Chair. So
Yeah,
if
go on
there's
ahead.
anybody else on Jade's Law. It's just an answer to Brian. Michael, you'd mentioned that if children and young people domiciled in other countries moved to Northern Ireland, that their marriage would still be recognised through common law. I just wanted to ask.
If only if though it is legal within that country.
Yeah, but I just wanted to ask on that. I mean, in your policy development, what consideration was given to whether or not that should change? So, for example, if somebody moves to Northern Ireland from a country where marriage is permitted at 15, I appreciate it's very tricky legal territory, but what consideration was given to the legislative change that would not recognise those arrangements?
You're right, it is particularly tricky because you're dealing with the law of a different country, and that brings in all sorts of difficult issues around competence and other such things for the Assembly to legislate in those areas. What I would say though is that there's been no evidence whatsoever of any 15-year-olds or 14-year-olds from countries that might permit marriage at that age coming to this jurisdiction to live. And we're also obviously alive to the fact that we've got a very close neighbouring jurisdiction that still permits marriage of 16 and 17-year-olds, a short boat trip away, and that of course will bring particular problems if we were to step in and say we're not recognising any marriages of that nature, although that could well change over the coming years as well, with the Scots consulting on it currently. Well, actually, when I say currently, it closed yesterday in their consultation, and we'll keep a close eye on it.
That's helpful, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So, and Jerry, do you want to begin?
Thanks, just John, on the NMO stuff more generally, because I think if I'm non-molestation
Okay.
orders, yeah. I think we briefly raised this the last time, Michael. Can you, like, not asking for what policy changes the Minister may or may not be considering, but can you give a sense of what power the Minister has around NMO legislation? Because I think it's all devolved within his remit, if that's correct.
Well, yeah, I mean, the substantive law relating to non-molestation orders would fall to us. It's more historic than anything else. We have powers within the 1998 Family Homes and Domestic Violence Northern Ireland Order, but domestic violence and abuse policy more generally sits with DOJ. But for the specific issue of non-molestation orders, yes, I mean we do have policy responsibility.
Would you be aware of what power the Minister has around that, or?
And well, I mean, you can amend the substantive law if he was so minded.
Let's go back to 1988. Say it again, sorry, 1988.
1998 order, Family Homes and
Other
Domestic
order?
Violence Northern Ireland Order in 1998.
So the Minister obviously could amend that if required. Would that be, what form of legislation would that be for an amendment? That would be,
Well, it would certainly be outside the scope of this bill.
let's go with this bill, yes, I
Yeah.
appreciate that, but like, it wouldn't be an SR or an SL, it would have to be
It would have to be it would need to be a bill.
a bill, yeah.
I mean, I would say that in this space, I mean, we obviously have non-molestation orders as one protection available to people who are subject to domestic violence and abuse. Separately to that, of course, the Department of Justice are developing proposals around other protections. So it forms part of the armoury of protection available.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much, Jerry. So thank you very much, Michael, and to your team, and we'll look forward to progressing with this legislation. Thanks very much for coming today.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, I think there's a few things there. Owen, and your point there about that moving jurisdictions, I would be interested to maybe pick that up. I don't know if it's something raised or somebody could look into, because I do think that it is, with the current movability of people and the just changing nature of things. It's an interesting point, and what I would be quite interested to know, what does it mean for people that would come here in that circumstance? Like what
Yeah.
restrictions or things could happen? Oh, sorry, not loud enough. Clary just says. So I think it would be an interesting piece to pick up just on what you had said there, Owen.
Yeah, it would be interesting to understand what other jurisdictions have done in that space. I mean, I can understand there are kind of extra jurisdictional issues, and also that with the devolved settlements, there are limitations in what we can do when other parts of the UK have a different approach. But it's not even the kind of Scottish issue that's my concern. It's
Yeah.
likely that that's going to change, but it is given recognition to marriages from countries where the age is even lower than that. That is cause for concern, and you
the
don't.
move here and what it actually means for those children and young people that
Yeah.
are living here. So I think we could pick it up some way and maybe consider that.
Sure, what normally happens is we'll get a raised briefing on the bill, and what I'll maybe do is intervene and ask them to do a wider comparator
Yeah.
to look at those probably looking sort of further east than Europe. just to get a better idea of what's going on and what might actually happen, or what are the implications.
Yeah, just because it hasn't happened before doesn't mean we shouldn't be mindful that whenever we're progressing legislation to future-proof it and think, well, what would happen if this, and have we got the safeguards in place, and what would it actually mean? So I think it would be quite a good one if everyone's content on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So members, moving now to agenda item 10. Don't think we anything else agreed on the back of that one, no? No?
The list of religious organisations, we'll
Yeah.
ask for that, because that sounds fascinating,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah.
Brian?
Well, I would be interested in that, what he was saying about the fit and proper person condition. I don't know whether we could write to the register.
Or that'll maybe come up in the
General-
raise paper as
Yeah,
well, though,
that-
whenever
that
we get
should
that
do,
initial.
They should do definitions on
Yeah.
that, but we can ask Philip Wales
Yeah.
for clarification on just exactly
Yes.
what does that mean.
Because I don't doubt there'll be some people who try and take things to extremes, you know, and it would
Mm.
almost to the point where it outrageous public decency, you know.
No,
Without wanting to be recognise there's
Yeah.
diversity in people, how people want things done, but there needs to be some standards, you know.
Yeah, no, that's grand, thank
We
you,
do
okay. So our Outturn and forecast written briefing, so members, the briefing material for this agenda item only arrived from the department at lunchtime yesterday, so was issued into the table pack. Members, beginning at page 29 of the table pack, we've got the Outturn data for March round 12. So remembering that there will be a round 13 to close out the year with accruals, which I see from the notes is due on the 20th of May. So this is, even though it's March, it's not the final report for the year, not subject to a little bit more change. So members, I would ask for your agreement to forward these papers to other statutory committees and the Assembly Audit Committee. You agreed?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So the department has reported on 4 expenditure categories: our non-ring-fenced resource DEL, ring-fenced resource DEL, capital DEL and FTC, with the tables broken down by category and department provided as usual. The key issues highlighted are the position of forecast overspend by DE of 11.1 million and forecast underspend by the Department of Health 0.1 million. This is a net reduction of 20.1 million pounds. In total, departments are reported a net easement of 3 million in non-ring-fenced DEL, including 4 million of Treasury earmarked easements. Once these are excluded, the overall position is a net forecast overspend of 1 million pounds. Departmental positions are set out at Annex A of page 36 of the table pack. However, members may wish to note that Department of Finance is reporting an easement of £2.7 million. This is £1.1 million from increased land registration and ordnance survey income, £0.4 million due to delays in filling learn and development vacancies, £0.4 million due to delayed NISRA project work, and £0.6 million relating to Integr8. In relation to the overall ring-fenced resource DEL pressures, the department highlights an easement of £27.8 million. This can only be used for non-cash costs relating to depreciation impairments and can't be used for any other purpose. Departmental positions are set out at Annex B, page 45 of the table pack. However, the majority of this concerns Department for Communities, 12.2 million, and TEO, 10.2 million. In relation to capital DEL, departments have reported an easement of £3.2 million, with the departmental positions set out at Annex C on page 54 of the table pack. Financial transaction capital FTC, departments are forecasting a total easement of £1.1 million. The departmental positions for FTC are set out in Annex D at page 63 of the table pack. No overcommitments were reported in March R12, with the explanations for the variances exceeding the threshold of 5% and £250,000 detailed in Annex E, page 68 of the tabled pack. Members will note that explanations reflect information from departments. They are not a Department of Finance view.
Keep going.
Yeah, so written briefings further scheduled for the 20th of May, with the oral briefing on the final outturn on the 1st of July expected to include the June monitoring round. So members, this isn't the closed position, but it's sort of brought us to where Joanne McBurney had said, broadly in line, not looking like we're going to be over budget. So members, I would ask if there are any comments or members content to note. Content? Are we okay?
We're on briefing quorum at the minute.
Okay.
We need a fifth to come back to make decisions. However, what we can do
Well, we can just
is
fly on.
go
It's
through
only-
items
yeah.
where we don't need agreement.
Okay, that's grand. So agenda item 11 is the performance and culture of the civil service inquiry. The deliberations, members, there are no papers to be considered under this agenda item this week. Item 12, correspondence. We've got item 12.1, the Examiner Statutory Rules, 62nd report, page 71 of the table pack. There are no rules referenced with relevance to this committee, so this is provided for noting only. Agenda item 13, we've got the draft forward work plan, page 258 of the meeting pack. We'll ask the clerk to discuss, and when other members come back, we'll maybe agree it, but do you want to brief on it?
Yeah, just to go through this, Chair, and we'll just do the dates of things happening. So we've got our bill clerk, Oveen Baker, coming in on the 6th of May to give a bit of a background on the bill, marriage bill, and she can possibly at that point also pin down some of the legalities and language for us as well. We've got an oral briefing scheduled for the 10th of June around the level of need analysis. You remember last week Joanne talked a bit about how specific work on this is ongoing because of how we're reaching our level of need differently to Scotland and Wales, so it's a different team working on this. So we've managed to get a briefing organised for them for the 10th of June. We're slotting the Youth Assembly in on the marriage bill as well for the 17th of June, so they're already starting a process where they'll talk to the Youth Assembly unit, but they also have a much bigger group of young people who were the original applicants, who only some of them got into the Youth Assembly, and they do consultation with them. So they'll go through a process on the bill of asking them what they think it's on, and then they'll come and brief us. We've also looked at, and we'll go to the department on this one, members talking about the growth deals today. We have some space on the 24th of June. I appreciate it's distant, but we get information in the meantime. But just for a briefing on what's going on, that'll probably give them a bit of time to have conclusions on a number of the issues that were raised today. So we can't agree on either of those. But we can move to AOB, Chair, if you want to do that.
No, that's grand. Under AOB, I just want to thank the clerk and the full committee team, the assembly staff, for arranging and facilitating this visit today. It has been really, really good. Slightly different. I don't know that anybody knew what to expect whenever we came down here, but I know there's a lot of work goes on in planning these things, arranging the details for everyone. So thank you very, very much to the team. I think it's been really, really useful.
What I would suggest now, Chair, that we do is do a very brief suspension for a comfort break.
Okay.
And when we get a 5th member back, we will go back and make those very quick decisions, because we are otherwise
Are they far away?
good. No, from what I gather, no. But if we just do a very brief pause.
Okay, so just members, if we just, as discussed on the forward work plan, agree that the bill clerk will provide a briefing on the marriage civil partnership bill on the 6th of May, oral briefing on the level of need analysis for the 10th of June, and the Youth Assembly briefing on the marriage bill for the 17th of June. Members, are you agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed, yeah. And are you agreed that this be published on the committee web pages?
Agreed.
Okay, thanks very much. So once again, thanks very much to the team for the committee and for the staff of the Assembly for facilitating this, and to all at Integr8. And just under AOB, I want to wish Brian Kingston all the very best as he's running London Marathon on Sunday.
Thank you.
And any other AOB, anybody? No? Okay, so date, time and place of the next meeting, Wednesday the 29th of April at 2 p.m. in the Senate Chamber Parliament buildings, and I put the question that the committee meeting does now adjourn.
Yep.
Thank you.